Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Sorry I haven't been around in a while, but it's gotten very busy at the office. We suddenly just got like ridiculous. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk to you guys about the giants that are mentioned in the Bible. Now, before I get started there is already a gentleman which I believe has done a splendid, fantastic job on this particular subject. And his channel is as follows. Now, this particular gentleman has no idea I even exist, okay? So I'm not doing this because he's asked me to or because whatever, but like I said, he doesn't even know I exist. Besides, my channel's basically irrelevant as far as YouTube is concerned. So this is just my own volition because I saw his video on the matter and I thought it was excellent. All right, and the gentleman is Inspiring Philosophy. You can go to his channel there, and he actually does a video on this exact subject there that I watched a little while ago. You can see Nephilim, Inspiring Philosophy, so on and so forth. So I just wanted to give a shout out to not a shout out to him specifically or anything like that, because there's no way he's going to see this, but you know, I thought he did an excellent job on this particular video, on this particular topic, and as a result I thought it would be good to let you guys know, because you can go there and he really did a absolutely fantastic job, which then leads to the question, if I think he did such a good job, why don't I just refer and then let that be the end of it? The reason for that is because I want to approach the subject from a slightly different way, and I'll elaborate. So there's certain points I want to bring out that he didn't. So he basically does a very rigorous textual assessment and stuff like that, sort of looking at the words almost in a literary style, a very there's how can you say, like looking at this like it were any other piece of literature, as it were. For the most part, and I believe that he is generally that kind of individual. Or on his channel, I've seen some of his stuff. His stuff is generally quite excellent. Now, obviously, I doesn't mean I agree with everything he espouses. Before those people decide to freak out, I don't agree with everything, but you know, the guy does a fantastic job, so he deserves his place at the end of the day. Now, I want to look at this from a way of how to reason as a Christian reading it, how to reason when all you've got is the Bible in front of you and you don't have necessarily outside authorities and stuff like that. And I want to bring in a different perspective, in the sense of bringing in typology. Now, it's not that he doesn't do this at all, but I'm going to maybe do it. Maybe I'm going to bring a new flavor. Who knows? So basically what I'm going to do is I'm first going to set up my stall, as it were. I'm going to explain to you how I view the issue, and then from there go through all the texts that I've pulled up. Now, this is not exhaustive, okay, because otherwise it will just take forever. It's not exhaustive, but I pulled out all of the texts that I believe brings out the vision that I'm trying to put forward, and then, you know, you guys, you agree, don't agree, you know, sort of thing. Now, I used to be in the New Age movement once upon a time, and so this Nephilim business really was absolutely splendid. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring this up, in the sense of how you look at a text and sort of read it, right? Because it's a lot of people, and just to show the dual-mindedness that people can have, where they don't really deal with things in a particularly honest way. So, for example, when I was in the New Age movement, right? Generally speaking, in the New Age movement, people don't really like Christianity, okay? There's a lot of anti-Christian sentiment in there. So basically, the New Age movement is polytheism, mostly welcome. Christianity is tolerated because they have to, if they're going to be like, we love everyone, then they have to sort of allow it, okay? But they really don't like it. Now, and generally the consensus is that that the Bible's been corrupt, you can't really know what it's saying and stuff like that. But here's the thing, right? Whenever they're trying to prop up one of the many very peculiar ideas that tend to float around in the New Age movement. They will then go to the Bible and say, oh, but the Bible references this and this and this, as if what the Bible is recounting is true, but merely been misinterpreted. Whereas on the other hand, when a Christian comes and tries to affirm certain things, they're like, no, the Bible, the whole thing is just corrupt. So the Muslims do this as well, right? Very, very similar to the Muslims. When the Bible supports something they believe, when they think that a particular verse supports Islam, they say, oh, look there, the Bible supports Islam. But when we want to bring up a verse that denies Islam, they're like, oh, but the Bible's been corrupted. So it's like, which one is it, right? It's either corrupted and therefore it is useless for all practical purposes, or not, in which case, so you do get that a lot, sort of thing. And I remember being in the New Age and thinking about like a lot of mystical histories and stuff like that, and being very interested in this whole Nephilim, these giants and these weird things. And you get into this stuff. I believed so much stupid stuff when I was in the New Age. The Anunnaki have come down and done funny things, and yeah, but that was part of the journey. We all got to take it. And much to my chagrin, I have to confess, I believed some really, really strange stuff. So my stall, to set up my stall, basically is as follows. When you read the story of the Nephilim, so here's the story of the Nephilim, right? It says, and this is basically where I want to go with this. It came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, then that the sons of God, now the sons of God saw the daughters of men that they were fair, and they took of them wives. Then the Lord spoke, no. And there were giants in the earth in those days, right? So some Bible translations translate this to Nephilim, gives him a specific name in the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and they bare children to them. Now, what I believe is going on is it's those two specific words, sons of God and giants or Nephilim, those two specific words. If those words sort of basically are what capture the attention of people in general, right? It's those are the linchpins of the text, as it were. And then sons of God in its relation, so it seems to be set up against the idea of daughters of men. And they think, well, maybe, and that's sort of where the whole thing seems to rest. Okay, so my position is as follows, right? If we look at this particular passage, we find that it's talking about how things descend. Up to the time of Noah, got very wicked, and then God decided to destroy everyone. So if we put it in the timeline of biblical history, we see that this event takes place, that all of this takes place after the fall of mankind. Now, the reason why I make this point very specific or explicit is because in the Garden of Eden, who caused the fall? It was Satan. So Satan and his angels had already fallen. At which point, the demons are no longer called the sons of God, they're called demons, right? The angels are no longer called angels. All of the titles which delineate their alliance to God, they lose those titles, right? And we understand in the Bible that the use of titles is very, very, very important. People's names change. Often in the Bible, a person's name was now it was not like today you have just an arbitrary name. I like this name, I'll call you by that name. But in the Old Testament, names were actually more like titles really than just something as an identifier. Okay, so the titles would have changed. Therefore, if you are reasoning, right, when you look over there where it says sons of God, you have to assume that in this verse, in this place, and nowhere else in the Bible are demons called sons of God. Okay? In this one place and nowhere else. Why? Because those who were those angels who were the allies of God wouldn't do such a thing. Okay, they wouldn't do such a thing, right? Because that division, the angels that retained allegiance to God and the angels that fell, that had already happened. And that delineation had already been made. The angels that stayed with God were the sons of God, and the angels that went with Satan and all that sort of thing, they became demons. They are the demons, the fallen ones, and so on and so forth. Okay? Now, in this particular place, so there's the assumption, right? And here's another assumption. The title sons of God refers to both men, humans, and angels. So the second assumption is that in this particular place, they're talking about angels and not humans, right? Therefore, when you make these assumptions, you then have to substantiate them. Say, this is why I believe that A, in this one place, it's talking about demons, right? Even though demons are never called sons of God anywhere else in the Bible. And that they're angels. And also, so when we look at the title of sons of God, when you read onto the rest of the Bible actually lists criteria as to what kind of an individual do you need to be in order to receive the title sons of gods, right? So for example, it says, well-known verses, behold what manner of love the Father has given unto us, that we should be called the sons of God. And we know that this is a title applied to people who have accepted Jesus Christ and so on and so forth, who have been saved and all these kinds of things. So in order to receive the title of son of God requires a certain tie allegiance to him, a certain kind of character. There are prerequisites before you receive that title. And so immediately the title sons of God disqualifies demons, right? And so if the title disqualifies demons, it therefore means that this cannot be angels. It has to be referred to humans, has to refer righteous humans. Now, the gentleman in Inspiring Philosophy, he illustrates three different prominent views in the world, and the one that he eventually takes is that, or that some people take, is that it's the line of Seth and the line of Cain that clash with each other. And some people say that the giants are ancient kings. So when it says the giants, the men of renown, so the word giants does refer to size, but it has a second meaning that it refers to men who were renowned, who were great, that performed great deeds that the world admired. And we have such people today, right? You say he's a giant in his particular field. He's an intellectual giant. We use that word in that same way today. And in Genesis, it's actually, when it uses the word giants, the Nephilim, it's actually got both connotations, and the verse tries to bring that out as well, when it then goes on to specify men of renown that did all these kinds of things, men who wanted to have a great name for themselves, in a sense, right? So I believe then that the mere fact that it uses the title sons of God disqualifies God's angels and disqualifies demons. So it can be neither one. It must be men. Now, when people say it's the line of Seth versus the line of Cain, I don't believe that it is necessary to make that distinction, right? Or that it's even necessary to make the distinction that it was ancient kings even necessarily. I believe that to try and make a precise distinction of who it is not absolutely necessary. And the reason for that is, for example, if people say the line of Seth versus the line of Cain. Now, here's the thing. Even today, right, people who are atheists convert to Christianity, and people who are Christians convert to atheism. There's always that cross-pollination. So to say that it's the line of Seth and the line of Cain is not necessary, because people could have converted. They could have moved around and stuff like that sort of thing. But the concept is that overall, by the end, everyone had been corrupt, including the sons of God, who was basically anyone who, even those who came across, let's say if they were converted but then fell away again then later. So it's open. It could be absolutely anyone. So basically anyone that was righteous, or who converted and became righteous, or whatever the case might be, moved over, sort of thing. And that's the idea there, right? Now, the language of the text reports it as just like, as a matter of fact, right? And when it's dealing out the punishment, it just talks about, and God would not strive with man. It doesn't mention anything else. It just mentions with man, right? God will not strive with man. I will punish man. I will do this with man, that with man. So at no point does it give you a say, oh, this is any. It's just mundane. It's man. And the only thing special about these people that fell was that they were the sons of God, that they were righteous and fell away. And when you look at the rest of the Bible makes these things quite explicit. God regularly says, I take no pleasure in them that fall away, those who had a faith, that were good, that were righteous, but then fall away. And then you have another imagery, right? And this is where then typology comes in. In typology, you have a thesis and an antithesis. You basically have the type, the antitype, thesis, in the sense where God uses imagery and stuff like that in order to try and express a greater truth, right? So throughout the Bible, you see this motif repeat again and again. So here in Genesis, it's giving the history of the world, the history of mankind. It seems completely unreasonable to think that there was suddenly insert, even if it was possible that that would be relevant, right? Suddenly these angels, half angel, half human things jump in. It makes absolutely no sense at all. It's just it doesn't fit in the narrative. And the narrative is basically, it's telling you all these things because at the end of it, everyone became wicked, and then there was Noah, who was the only one righteous, and so because they were wicked, then God basically drowned them all. Okay, so enough, off with you, right? And it's that build-up. So because the righteous went with the daughters, so the righteous, the sons of God, messed around with the daughters of men, right? And we also in the Bible see often where this contrast is parallel, where don't go after the ways of man, but go after the ways of God, right? And these kinds of things. Don't be in love with the world, be in love with God, and all these kinds of things. So this duality is constant. This comparison is always made, right, between righteous and unrighteous. And when it's righteous, they're sons of God, and when they're unrighteous, it's sons of man, and the idea there is that man basically worships himself. It's man's philosophy, it's man's way, it's man's reasoning, it's human centric is the concept that's going there. And so you have sons of God, daughters of man, and you basically see that this male female context where the female is the one leading the male astray. And you have this in the typology, you have the church is a female, right? And then you've got the good church and the apostate church, right? The virgin and the harlot, right? The virgin and the prostitute. So you have the great whore of Babylon and all these kinds of things. And so and then men, you often see the motif of good men who start messing around with women, having more than one wife, getting a woman from another tribe. So you see as well in the culture of Israel, they were discouraged from marrying anyone outside of the tribe of Israel, right? Don't go marry the daughters of men, the daughters of other tribes. You have enough women in here. And you see this happen to Samson. Samson, a big part of his problem was the fact that he was not interested in an Israelite girl. He was only interested in a Philistine woman, right? You have the same thing with Solomon. He was a great king, a righteous man, and he fell. Why? Because he started messing around with foreign women. And you see this constantly. You have Israel with the whole Moabite issue when they're coming through Moab, and then there's the whole issue with Balaam, and again you see the right Israel started looking at the Moabitess woman, and they're like, "Hey!" and they eventually got into trouble and were led astray because of that. And so God uses this imagery. The typological imagery used in the Bible is constantly using this masculine and feminine, that and then the feminine has sort of is either the virgin, which is the good church, or the harlot, which is the, you know, the bad church, or and so you constantly get this message. So considering the typology, what's already contained within the whole context of how the Hebrews tell their stories, right? It makes absolute perfect sense that in this sense that the narrative is saying, well, here were the good guys, they started messing around with the bad guys, they all got so corrupt, because here's the problem, a lot of Christians, they think, I can go and I can influence them, right? When in fact, they're the ones that influence the Christian, and the Christian eventually becomes apostate, right? That's how it usually is, right? Especially if the Christian goes off in presumption. They don't consider who they marry. So Jesus himself says, you know, can two walk together unless they be in one accord, right? The house divided against itself will fall. So don't be unequally yoked. You get these things throughout the Bible all the time, right? Don't be unequally yoked and stuff. Consider who are you uniting with, right? That person is either going to help you or is going to hinder you. And we see that today, right? People just want to go off and marry. The only thing they think of is my passion, right? And that's it. And then afterwards they're divorced, beating each other up, and it's a whole disaster. Okay, so we're going to look at the texts and see if this is the case, right? The way I'm saying it, and it is the most. So when you're reasoning, if all you have is your powers of reasoning, you have to say, which one makes the most assumptions that you cannot prove, right? Is it the one that assumes that that in this one case, sons of God refers to demons that would do such a wicked thing, right? There's the assumption that this refers to angels and not human beings, right? It assumes that angels could even do this in the first place, right? That angels are able to procreate at all. And people often refer to times where angels manifest themselves in human bodies and stuff like that. But the power to procreate, right? The power, the ability to procreate, to make a new life, as far as we can tell in the Bible, was never given to angels. Even if they can manifest a physical body, the power of procreation, of producing a new life, you are assuming that such a thing was ever given to angels. You're making it's an assumption, right? So there's all these assumptions. So the most, just logically speaking, the most parsimonious, the view that makes the least amount of assumptions, is the one that sons of God merely refers to righteous men, and daughters of man merely refers to the daughters, the sons of the righteous people mingling and intermarrying and taking more than one wife. So polygamy, when you see that the genealogies of the first men, specifically of the line of Cain, are given, you see that one of them took more than one wife, and this was such an unusual thing that it was even mentioned. I think, who was it Lamech or someone like that? They said, and he took two wives. It's like, why would you, if this wasn't unusual, why would you even make it up if everyone was running around with 3 or 4 wives? You understand what I'm saying? But it was noted he was the first one to take more than one wife, and then in the context it says, and they took of themselves however many wives they wanted. And so you see this motif of polygamy coming in. And when you look in the Bible, every single time there was polygamy, because a lot of people, in order to support polygamy, they say, oh, well, Abraham had more than one wife, and Solomon had more than one wife, and so had more than one wife, and stuff like that. However, in every single one of these cases, there was nothing but hell broke loose. Okay, it just didn't work. The wheels fell off the wagon every single time, right? Solomon eventually fell. He became corrupt. He eventually became an oppressor of the people. Abraham, and we know the disaster that ended up, had to eventually tell Hagar to leave, and it was just always problems, right? Polygamy just always caused problems, no matter what. Okay, and then when we're talking about giants, when people talk about the word giants, they immediately, when you hear the word giant, people immediately assume that it means some skyscraper tall person, but it doesn't. Okay, the word giant just means the guy was really large. Okay, and for example, Goliath, and we're going to see the passage just now. Goliath was considered to be one of the giants, right? And Goliath was 8'9", I believe, okay, which is freaking massive, okay? But it's not skyscraper, okay? It's within the possibility of human development for that to happen, right? And over time, depending on nutrition and stuff like that, the size of human beings have increased and have dropped. So the better nutrition we have and stuff like that, we get to be a lot taller. So basically, your Scandinavian countries and all that kind of stuff, they're very, very tall. The average is 6 foot tall, the average. But then you go to places like Africa, where some of the people are like 4 feet tall, or 4.5 feet tall on average. Now, put someone who's 4.5 feet tall next to someone who's 6 foot or 6'5". The person's a giant by comparison. And so the word giant is in a sense a relative term. Well, is giant is massive compared to what? Okay, and the Israelites, you even can go to Israel right now. Jewish people are not very tall. Okay, they're not very tall at all. Okay, so you know, it doesn't take much for a Jewish. You don't have to be particularly tall for the average a Jewish person of average height to look up at you. Okay, so it's just one of those things. It's like Brazilians, right? I'm Brazilian. Brazilians, they're getting a lot taller now, right? So for the past like 15-20 years, there've been a lot of really tall Brazilians. Even myself, I'm 5'9", I think. I'm 5'9". That's tall for a Brazilian, right? I'm mixed race, but that's tall for a Brazilian. Most of my other family members are tiny, right? My aunts and uncles, and they're like really short. So compared to me, I'm also like built very, very differently. And you know, I mean, just watch Brazilian. You never see Brazilians playing football, like American football or rugby and these contact sports, right? Because they're not big enough, right? It's just, it doesn't work. Okay, they're not big enough. So I, you know, myself, I was a bit of an anomaly. Even if I think of my brother and my sister, they're very small people, right? My brother and sister, my brother is lean, right? Really thin. And nowadays, now that he's an adult and stuff like that, he's got very good definition, good muscle tone and stuff like that. But the whole way growing up, but he's still small, right? You wouldn't put him, you know, in rugby, you'd get demolished. Whereas I could, right? I'm a lot bigger, I'm a lot more robust. So it's unusual, very, very unusual. And even, you know, for the average Brazilian, you know, Scandinavians are giants, sort of thing, right? So it's a relative term. Anyway, so let's go to the internet source. So here it is. So if we go through it carefully, just taking into mind what it's actually saying, right? It came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth. So when what? When who? When men began to multiply on the face of the earth. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about men, right? That the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. So they just went and just married whoever they like, right? And then the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with who? With man. Says nothing else. Right, with man, for that he also is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. So in 120 years, I'm going to drown you all. There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that. So before the flood and after the flood. Now, for giants to still exist after the flood, right, what does that require? For giants to still exist after the flood, if the only ones who survived the flood was Noah and his family, it means that the genetic information for very large side had to be carried through these particular human beings. So the giants that came after came from them because they carried the genes. Means everyone had the genes, even someone who was righteous. Do you see where the issue? So Noah was righteous, and everyone, they were all righteous enough to be saved, and they were clearly carrying the genes, because nowhere do you see in the Bible say, well, the angels or the demons came and did this all over again. You don't see it. It's just they existed then and they existed afterwards, and this is noteworthy. Why? Well, because only a handful. Because the population bottlenecked at Noah and his family, and then so the fact that they still existed afterwards is noteworthy, because well, maybe, you know, they didn't understand genetics in the same sense that we do, but, you know, they were afterwards, and there they are, right? Goliath was one of them. So this is a salient point. All right. And also after that, so before the flood and after the flood, so obviously even Noah carried the genetics, and he was not evil. So there's nothing particularly special about this gene other than it makes you really freaking tall. Okay? When the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. Now it's reasonable to expect that this were the old kings or old rulers, or just any man who was particularly concerned with having a big name, being renowned. So basically, the narcissists of the pre-flood world. Basically, right? The Donald Trumps of the pre-flood world, okay? Essentially, right? I'm not saying this because I'm just trying to knock on Trump or whatever, you know, or anything like that. You know, I don't care, right? I don't care about him. I don't care about Hillary. Doesn't mean I'm a Democrat. I'm neither a Republican nor a Democrat. I believe the whole thing is cockamamie. So please, right? Don't go after me because I went. But basically, the Trumps of the day, the Elon Musks of the day, right? They all want to be there. Oh, look at me, I'm wonderful. What I've achieved, okay? Men of renown. So that's it. Men of renown. So it's the same became mighty men which are of old, men of renown. And again, the Bible, when it's talking about David's military lieutenants, it calls them mighty men as well. Right? King David, right? He was a great warrior, and his mighty men. Right? Men of renown. So there's nothing overly unusual here except for the size. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth. So it's evil. We have the motif, right? So apostasy, they're not maintaining God's ways, right? What was the result? They became wicked. And every imagination of the thought of his heart was evil continually. And it repented the Lord. God regretted the fact that he made man. And I will destroy them whom I have created. So again, I will destroy who? Man, whom I have created from the face of the earth. Right? Both man and beast and every creeping thing, fowls of the air. So here God's making an exhaustive list. Say, I'm going to wipe everything out, but he makes no mention of the human angel hybrid funny thing here, except boom, Noah foundation, and these are the generations of Noah, right, and so on and so forth. Noah begat 3, and they went on and corrupt, so on and so forth, right? The end of all flesh has come before me, and so on and so forth. So there's nothing special there. Right, particularly special. Now, if you go to one of the reasons why I like Bible Gateway is you can type in a search and you can go have a look. So, you know, for example, Ecclesiastes, I've seen the travail which God have given to the sons of men to be exercised in it. So you can get from the contexts that exactly what God means when he's saying sons of God and when he's saying sons of men, and you can go, there's all the references and stuff like that, but I'm only going to bring out a few salient ones. Now here we go. Here's here's one. Jezebel, kingdom give thee vineyards, wrote letters to Abraham, sealed it with the noble proclaimer flask, right, son of Belial. Right, now here's an interesting thing. And said to men, so Jezebel was worship Belial. The Jezebel was a corrupt woman in Israel. So we see here, and said to men, sons of Belial, right? So at no point does anyone look at a verse like that and say, well, the god Belial had, or his demon minions, had sex with a human woman and created sons. You understand by saying sons of Belial that what it means, it's men or women who allied themselves with this god, right? That's it. It's that simple. No one reads more into texts like that, right? And you see there. So that's just an example of how it works, and so on and so forth, right? Interesting example. You see stuff like that go throughout. Observe that which I command you this day. Behold, I drive out before thee the Amorite, Canaanite, Hittite, Perizzite, and Hittite, and Jebusite. Don't make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land whither thou goest. Right? Why? Because they are evil. You're going to destroy their altars, break their image, cut down their groves. You will worship no other gods. Lest thou make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they go whoring. Right? There's that motif again. Go whoring after their gods and do sacrifice of their gods and stuff like that. Right? So it's using that man, woman, husband, wife motif again, right? And there again, and thou take of their daughters unto thy sons, and their daughters go whoring after their gods, and they make thy sons go whoring after the gods. It's the same motif. It's the exact same motif, that sort of thing. So exact same motif. You guys, righteous people, Israelite, you're my people. Don't go after those people, because what's the result? You end up evil, worshipping false gods, and you end up wicked. So you righteous people, if you mix with the unrighteous people, you're going to then, all of you together in one happy pot, you're going to all become corrupt. Okay? It's the same motif, and this motif has been used, and Genesis is no exception. Right? Is no exception. It's the exact same typological motif. This is the typology. It's the exact same imagery, exact same typological motif. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. So here is a good parallel. So in this sense, sons of God is referring to angels, and Satan came also. He's not referred to as a son of God. And the deceiver, so he's given a different title. He's no longer son of God. Different title. Right? The title's important. When the morning stars came together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. So again, sons of God refers to angels. Right? These are clearly good angels. Okay? Shouted for joy. So this is at the creation. So this was already the case at creation, right? Talking in Job. If you go read Job, Job is quite beautiful. Right, Ecclesiastes. I gave my heart to seek all the things under heaven and done. This sore travail hath God given unto the sons of man to be exercised therewith. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. That which is crooked cannot be made, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. So here again, unrighteousness, is given the context unto the sons of man, right? God allows this sore travail hath God given the sons of man, so that, because why? Because they are wicked, because they are crooked, because they're whatever. And we know, if we look at again at the biblical motif, that God uses another motif where it's like trials. We are purified in the fires of tribulation, and we overcome. So blessed are those who overcome, and all these kinds of things, so that we can then get out of this wickedness and move from merely being sons of men to sons of God. Right? So there's that motif again. Right? It's giving you the context for what does it mean when it's sons of God. And in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there is a time for every purpose and for every work. And I said in mine heart concerning the estate of the sons of men, that God might manifest them, and that they might see themselves are beasts. Again, sons of men are wicked people. For that which befalleth the sons of men befalleth beasts. Have even one thing before, and so on and so forth, right? Sons of men, daughters of men, same thing. It's wicked people. And he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was with the wild asses. They're talking about Nebuchadnezzar here. They fed him with grass like the oxen. So he was driven from the sons of men. So Nebuchadnezzar was driven from Babylon. Basically, they were wicked, apostates, false idol worshippers, etc., etc. And this was the conversion, right? This was the conversion of Nebuchadnezzar. And they fed him with grass like the ox, and so forth. Fulfilling a prophecy, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Right? Yet number the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass, right? Shall come to pass that in that place where it was said unto them, you are not my people. So before, you are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, you are the sons of the living God. Again, there's that conversion, right? There's that conversion. Okay? So, children of Israel, those who, so Israel, because Jacob, he wrestled with God and overcame. Remember I said earlier on, he wrestled with God and overcame, and by overcoming, right, you are refined, you become better, and you become a son of God, right? So there's a transition. That's what's required for you to become a son of God. There's something that has to happen first, right? It's not just an arbitrary title. But as many as received him, he gave, then to them gave he power to become sons of God. So what's the criteria to be a son of God? They that receive him, Jesus Christ, even to them that believe his name. So you will not, and this is why I believe that sons of God does not refer to fallen angels. And only fallen angels would do such a wicked thing. It's that simple. Only fallen angels would do such a wicked thing, assuming that they even have the procreative ability in the first place, right? Only wicked angels would do such thing, and a wicked angel would never be called a son of God, okay? Because there's a prerequisite for you to receive that title. It's a prerequisite to receive the title. For as many as are led by the Spirit of God, they are the sons of God. Again, that's the prerequisite for being called a son of God. And because ye are sons, God hath sent forth his Spirit from the Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. So just substantiating the issue, that ye may be blameless and harmless, the sons of God, without rebuke. Again, so, in the midst of a crooked and perverse nation, among whom ye shine as lights in the world. So again, this is the criteria for you to be a son of God, right? So, clear as day, it's good people messing around with bad people, becoming corrupted and doing evil, so that they lose the title of sons of God. You can lose the title. Behold what manner of love the Father has shown, bestowed upon us, that we shall be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not. Again, that comparison, the sons of God and the world. The world knoweth us not, because it knew him not. Okay, so again, that parallel. Beloved, now we are sons of God, and it doth not yet appear that what we shall be, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is, right? So you need to be like Christ, otherwise you need to be righteous, you need to be aligned with God, otherwise you're not a son of God. Simple as that. Very straightforward. You don't have to go anywhere else. You don't have to be overly complicated. It's useful. It's useful to go and get other stuff and dig into the original Hebrew language and get into all that great stuff. But if you don't have all of that, the answers themselves are already in the Bible. The Bible will tell you itself what it means. The context alone. You are of your father the devil. There we go. So there's the father, the devil. Does that mean that Satan came and shagged their mothers and produced them? No. And the lusts of your father you will do. Right? Because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. Right? You are of your father the devil. Right? So no one reads into this that the devil, who was also a fallen angel, went and had sex with women and produced Nephilim. Right? It's the father. When you're saying sons of God, sons of the devil, sons of Belial, it denotes any individual, whether angelic or human, that is allied to the son of whoever it is that title is given. Right, and just for reference, here's Strong's Concordance gives the giants Nephilim, right? So that's the word that's used there. Just some, for those who are interested. Doesn't tell you much. And here's the root word for Nephilim, right? So the root word, so it's not exactly, but it's the root word. And the root word, to fall, lie, be cast down, to fail, right? To fail. So what did they fail at? Right? To fall of a violent death, to fall prostrate oneself before. So how are they falling? The Nephilim, the fallen ones, how are they falling? They're falling from grace, they're falling away from God, and so on and so forth. To fall upon, attack, desert, fall away, go away to, fall into the hand of. So this is, it's negative for the most part. To cause to fall, even here, to cause to fall, right? So the Nephilim would have done what? Would have been a bad influence on the sons of God and would have caused them to fall, to knock down, lay prostrate. So this denotes that, so the whole concept, all of these concepts are within that word, that they were fallen and they would cause others to fall, that they were very violent, they were very oppressive. And that's the kind of context that word gives. So there's nothing that isn't human about that, right? We're like that. We're that miserable, right? But these people were exceptionally miserable, right? Because that was eventually the final state of things. So here's giants. So there were giants in the earth in those days, also afterwards. So that's just the uses of it. Let me see, what have I got here? All right. Yeah, so just if you do a search for giants, that'll give you all of the references where they talk about the giants. Right, it's useful to do. Israel is Shittim. People began to commit whoredom with the daughters of Moab. Okay, there's that Balaam situation there. Whoredom with the daughters of Moab. Call of the people to sacrifice to the gods, so on and so forth. Israel joined himself to Baal Peor, and the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel in the same way that it was kindled against the people before the flood, and they got themselves smitten. And in the same case, the anger of the Lord was kindled against them. He withdrew their protection, and Moab was able to, boom, smite the Israelites. Okay? Was able to smite the Israelites. Now this is about Samson. Then his father's mother said unto him, is there never a woman among the daughters of thy brethren, or among all my people, that thou goest to take the wife of the uncircumcised Philistines? So you can see the culture here. They knew full well that this is how they understood things, and this is how they would have understood Genesis issue where they're talking about the Nephilim. This is the mindset, the culture. This is how they would have understood it. That thou goest to take a wife of the uncircumcised Philistines. And Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she pleases me. Right? He's just thinking with that. Okay? Samson went to Gaza and saw there a harlot and went unto her. So same thing. Same issue. And Samson lay till midnight, so on and so forth. And yeah. And then it came to pass afterward that he loved a woman in the valley of Sorek, whose name was Delilah. So another woman he got involved with, right? Another woman that he got involved with, sort of thing. So if we look here, descendants of Anak came from the giants, and we were like, so Numbers, this is when they're going into Canaan, and they send the people in, and they come back and they're like, we can't go to war against these people because they're going to destroy us. They're massive. They're great. They've got weapons. And here's one of the interesting things, right? Earlier on, I was talking about that the quality of one's nutrition contributes to one's increase in size. So one of the reasons why Brazilians in recent years, right, my people, have been increasing in height so much so that Brazilian supermodels are becoming more and more common, right, is because the dietary needs of the population are becoming more improved. So for example, many Brazilians descended from very, very hard times because there was slavery in Brazil, and there was a whole bunch of grief in Brazil, right? And poverty is crazy in Brazil, right? And so because of all of that kind of stuff, the Brazilian population would have been relatively small, right? And that's always been the case. And you see the same thing with the Japanese, right? The Japanese, before they came into the world and opened their borders up to the world and started changing, they were tiny. They were absolutely tiny. You read historical records of how they were tiny people, but nowadays they're getting taller and taller and taller, and the Brazilians are taller, and this is the nutritional thing. Now, it's interesting that when the Israelites come to Canaan, they come to Canaan, they say, and they send the spies into Canaan, go and look and scout and come and tell us what's going on. Can we go and, sort them out? And they come back and they say, oi, can't do it. These people are giants, right? And they notice that the land is flowing with milk and honey. It's flowing with milk and honey. Their dietary requirements are in abundance. And compare it to the Israelites. What were the Israelites? The Israelites were slaves, first of all, and then be running around in the desert for the past 40 years. Okay? They were first slaves, so there would have been food deprivation, a lot of hardship and stuff like that. And then for the past 40 years after they came out of Egypt, they basically were nomads. And typically, nomads are not very tall people. Typically, all right, not very tall at all. I think nomadic people on average don't really get much higher than about 5 foot, 5'5" sort of thing. They're not very tall people. Not very tall people at all. And makes sense, okay? Makes perfect sense. They were also regarded as giant like the Anakim, but the Moabites call them Emim. So, Deuteronomy. So this is well after the flood. They were also regarded as the land of the giants, but the Ammonites called them Zamzumim. Right, now here's an interesting king. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained in the remnant of the giants. So the giants eventually began to die out. Now here's something interesting that people get confused. Indeed, his bedstead was an iron bedstead. Is it not in the Rabbah of the people of Ammon? 9 cubits is its length, and 4 cubits width, according to the standard cubit. Now, 9 cubits puts him at... Here's the mistaken reasoning, and I think inspire Capturing Christianity, I think he brings it up as well, right? If I tell you that my bed is 2 meters long, does that tell you anything about my height at all? No, because I'm only 179. Okay, my bed is bigger than, but not that much bigger. Now, okay. Now, why would they mention his bed? Right? Why is this ridiculously sized bed? It's stupid big, okay? Made of iron. First of all, iron was it's like saying I had this massive bed made of gold. What would you when someone tells you my bed is massive, beyond excess of what I require it, what does that immediately tell you about the person? It means they're wealthy. It means they're a person of stature, okay? So can you imagine how big the queen's bed must be, for example? First of all, right? And made of the most expensive materials, so it denotes wealth and all that other stuff. Now, here's another thing. Culturally, the big men, right? What would they say about big men, right? Who are, I am the conqueror, okay? I'm the conqueror. And I've got a bed that's 13 cubits. That's 13 feet long and 4 cubits. So what's it here? It's 9 cubits in its length and 4 cubits wide. I've got this massive bed. What other kind of conquests, if we can put it that way, do you think they might be trying to refer to? Hey, our king, his bed is he's a man, right? Because this is something that those cultures were obsessed with. Even today, right? If you read the Quran, if you read Muslim sources, Quran, Hadith, and stuff like that, they're constantly going on about how sexually active Muhammad was. Ad nauseum. He had 11 wives, and they like to say, well, he had the virility of 10 men, and he could go all night with his 11 wives, and every night he had a different wife, right? It's the same thing. So look at our leader. He's he's good with the ladies, right? It's that simple, right? And People who are Eve, the Bible delineates the parameters of marriage. It says marriage is a monogamous, committed relationship that is designed to last your entire life, right? Wickedness in the Bible, right? This fornicating with all kinds of women all over won't do, right? I don't care whether it's consenting, whatever. God says, not how I designed it. No. Okay? And this is the nature of people that, and we notice even today, right? As the world becomes more immoral, they move further and further away from the concept of a monogamous relationship, right? People are marrying their dogs. Literally. They're marrying their dogs. And let me telling you, they're having sexual relations with those animals as well, okay? So it's just, the further away we get from God's ideal, the more stupidity and nonsense goes on in the world. It's just that simple. It's that simple. And people want to deny it, and people want to about it because we're so progressive and no one can judge, but the evidence is out there in the world for you to see. Right? So it doesn't necessarily delineate how tall Og is. So that he had a massive bed, and there's reasons for talking about his bed. I mean, they could have talked about not only his bed, they could have talked about anything of his, right? They could have said, if they just wanted to tell his size, they would have just said, well, this is how tall the guy is. But no, they're talking about his beds. Why his bed of all things, right? Because if he was 13 feet tall, for example, everything that he had, his shoes, his armor, his everything would have been absolutely massive. And they could have just described one of those things. But they didn't. They're describing, oh, this guy's bed. So it's telling you something, okay? He's got his big bed for all his ladies, okay? Because, you know, they must, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I'll give half of the tribe Manasseh and the land of the giants. So you hear they talk about the giants. And these were people who were there, and you know, the only thing unusual about them was they were usually particularly not nice people, typically, or rather promiscuous, typically pagan, and not particularly good people, right? And very large. All the kingdom of Og are in Bashan, who reigned in Ashtaroth, who remained of the remnant of the giants, for Moses had defeated and cast out these. Right, so there we go. If you are a great people, go to the forest country, clear for yourself the Perizzites and the giants, since the mountains are in Ephraim are to come. So there we go. So they talk about this, like these are large, mean, difficult people to get along with. But other than that, yeah, it's David fought the Philistine giants and you know, was one of the signs of the giants, and now here we go, here's a good reference, right? The weight of whose bronze spear was 300 shekels, who was bearing a new sword, thought he could kill David. Right? So we see here, when describing how big he was, right? The weight of, so it's not describing his bed all of a sudden, right? They want you to get a concept of how big this guy actually is and how strong he actually was by giving you the weight of his bronze spear, which was 300. By the way, this is ridiculous how heavy this thing is, right? Especially if it's made of bronze, because bronze is heavy. It's dense. It's 300. It's crazy. Most people today wouldn't be able to handle such a weapon. I don't think anyone today could handle such a weapon. Philistines goes, who was one of the sons of the giant. Yet again, war at Gath. Man of great stature, who had 6 fingers on each hand and 6 toes on each foot, 24 in number. So this is probably a deformity of some kind. It happens today. Nothing overly special. And he was also born to the giant. Right? There were 4 born to the giant in Gath, and they fell by the hand of David and the hand of his servants. So one of them was Goliath, and so on and so forth, right? Great giant in Gath, so on and so forth, and that's it. So, you know, and it does talk about, I don't actually have the verse up here, but it does talk about Goliath. And I think the only size that you actually get in the Bible of the size of the actual measurement height of the giant is Goliath. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, Goliath was 8'9", right? 8'9", which is absolutely massive. But is that really entirely beyond the scope of what is possible for human beings? So here's the tallest guy recorded, right? So recorded, he was 7'9". So here he is. This guy here is 6'5". Okay, check how big he is compared to someone who's now 6'5" already would tower over all of us. Right? And this guy is just crazy. 7'9", and it's not uncommon in you know, basketball and stuff like that to get guys who are like 7'1" or 7'2" or 7, you know, it's not uncommon. So 8'9" is basically another foot on top of that. You know, it's not, you know, beyond the realm of possibility. Not beyond the realm of possibility. And specifically Guinness Book Records, right? So the tallest non-pathological, right? So a lot of people can get taller than this, right? But usually there's some kind of genetic problem or some deformity, some metabolic problem that makes them that way, and they don't live particularly long and stuff like that. But he was the tallest non-pathological, so his height was perfectly natural. Perfectly natural. So 2'9", and had the largest chest measurement of any non-obese man, which is 80 inches. That's a big chest, right? You wouldn't want to get you wouldn't want this guy to you wouldn't want a guy that big to lay into you, because let me tell you something. There is a reason. All right, so if you think about the Israelites being afraid of going to war with the Canaanites because they were big, even if they were just on average, like let's say they were on average 7 feet tall, on average. Do you have any idea? There's a reason why if you've ever done martial arts of any kind, boxing, doesn't matter, kung fu, they put you in weight categories, generally speaking, if you're going to go sparring and full contact and stuff like that, because you cannot even begin to imagine how much difference a weight advantage makes. An enormous difference, right? Absolutely massive difference that a weight advantage makes. I've nicked my leg here. I just discovered that's the nature of my job. Just the weight advantage that someone of 7 foot, who's healthy and well built and stuff like that, who's a warrior, someone who's 7 foot to 7.5 feet tall, the weight advantages such an individual would have on a person, on a people whose average height is about 5'5" is absolutely enormous. Imagine an army of people like that, right? They would obliterate, especially because in those days combat was right here, right? It was one-on-one. Would obliterate. They would just come and sweep you off your feet. It's a ridiculous advantage. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's just another way of looking at it. I thought I'd add my own flavor, my own view, because I've seen a lot of people do videos. One of the best I've ever seen was this one by Capturing Christianity. But the points that I've brought up, I've personally never seen anyone bring up these points ever before, and I think they're good points, they're salient points, and for those people who are not disposed, or who feel themselves not scholarly enough to go and cite this professor and that professor and read 30 books on the subject and go and take Greek language and Hebrew language and whatever the case to go invest, it's like it can get quite ridiculous. If all you have is the Bible and sound powers of reasoning, right? And, you know, Wikipedia, or whatever the case might be, you can, it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much. It doesn't have to be complicated, okay? And people read more into this than is actually there, right? Much more than is, and it's typical. It's typical, you know, people read all kinds of things into the Bible that are just not there. Like, I'm not even going to go there. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for me for me today. Thank you for watching this. I know that this Nephilim issue has been beaten to death, but I just wanted to show that there is another way of going about reasoning. If all you have is a text in front of you, the context of the Bible itself, the passages itself, it's not difficult. The Bible explains itself. It's self-references. It's like, here is what I'm saying. You don't have to get other people constantly, and not that that's not a good thing to do. But one thing that I myself personally, because I watch lots of lectures and videos and stuff, I do get very tired. Oh, but so-and-so expert said this and the other expert said that. And basically, like in a debate, you have basically two people on each side and all they do is quote these experts. It's like, why don't you people just read the Bible, right? And see what the literature itself is trying to tell you, rather than go and pick and pull, and which is fine, that's good in some cases, but not everyone's going to get into that, and it's not for the average Joe on the street. You don't have to go completely mad, and if you can reason rightly, if you can look at this and have a sensible approach to it, it'll help you in reasoning other things in the Bible, right? If you got the way of reading the Bible down, then even without all these experts constantly telling you what to do, you can look at it and you can weigh it up, right? And yeah, get other people to help you, of course. I mean, I'm making this video because it helps to have other people add in their 2 cents, but it doesn't have to be ridiculously complex and all experts with all these views and theories combating each other, and this view is wrong because that one is more stupid, and it's right. It's not necessary. The Bible can speak for itself in a lot of ways, and I think people often forget that. For the most people these days, people on the whole evolution stuff and the whole everything, it's like it's constantly outside things trying to tell us what the Bible's saying, rather than letting the text speak for itself first. The sufficiency of Scripture has just gone totally out the window these days, and people look at it, oh, Nephilim, it must mean some fantastical thing, therefore I'm gonna go and pick it apart, because there's a danger when you pick things apart. You can reveal truth, right? But picking stuff apart is also a very, very good avenue for obfuscation, right? It can be both. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that helps you, and thank you very much for your viewership. Keep well. God bless. Ciao.